Frankie from Flatbush coming to you from FSPN headquarters. Here in beautiful Central Florida, we have breaking news as we come on the air, and we were going to talk about something completely different. But the New York Jets have signed wide receiver Tim Patrick to a one-year deal worth, according to Zach Rosenblatt of The Athletic, at Zach Blatt, the deal is worth slightly more than the veteran salary benefit per source. That basically means veteran minimum. So they signed him for slightly more than the veteran minimum. So, hey, we got a guy that was long rumored to become a Jet. Now, Zach Rosenblatt also says the Jets view Patrick as a culture guy and a quality veteran depth at a position that needs it. So I would agree with all of that. Now this is not a big needle mover in terms of stats or anything. If we look at his career over here, this is a guy, he's big, he's 6'5", so that's good, 210 pounds. But this is a guy who was supposed to break out, around age 29. This was his age 27 season. He had 742 yards, 6 touchdowns. Then he followed it up 734 as the Broncos were trying to figure out their quarterback situation. And then he unfortunately had 2 years missed with injuries. And that's basically the story of Tim Patrick's career, unfortunately for him. But he did come back, and so that's nice. Resiliency. Came back with Detroit. This is where Aaron Glenn knew him from. And, of course, Muji knew him from his Denver years up here. And, has played, but, the age thing is a major factor. So, didn't do much for Jacksonville last year. But he's going to be 33 years old. Now, PFF, here's what he looks like. An average to above average player. Which, again, if you get an average player to be your third stringer, that's pretty good, actually. Now, what this guy's going to really do, if he makes the 53, which he probably will, maybe he'll be on the fringe, we'll see. But if he's on the 53, maybe he goes on the P squad, gets elevated, that sort of thing. But he's going to basically be a C-gap insert blocker because that's one thing he does do. 6'5", 210 pounds. This man, you can put him in motion, insert him right into the C-gap to sort of scoop out a safety or a little corner that's in there and help Breece Hall to conduct a Breece Lightning. So that is some breaking news. And, now the wide receiver core is looking, a little bit better. Here's our depth chart right here. And so now Tim Patrick fits in right here. Bumps Irvin Charles to third string. So I guess Patrick is technically second string. Maybe. Depends how they view these guys. Arian Smith is certainly going to make the roster. But, bulks it out a little bit more. And, gives us a veteran guy who can come in and not screw things up, basically. And isn't gonna, we got him for minimum dollars, doesn't mess with the cap at all, and isn't gonna expect, any role that you give him, he's gonna go ahead and play it. And they're saying he's a great culture fit, and so that means he's a great guy and all this. So wonderful for the locker room, great. He can help out with Omar Cooper's development and Kenyan Sadiq's development and Arian Smith's development and so forth and so on. A big bro type of guy. Perfect, great. Good job, Mooch. Now, we were not going to talk about Tim Patrick as I button my shirt because you don't want to see the manliness underneath there. No. That's a little too much for you. But we were not going to talk about Tim Patrick in this video. It literally broke as I was pressing record. So there's not much to say about it other than what I said. But stick it in here. Now, what were we going to talk about? Well, we're on the verge of the schedule release tomorrow, and we got that going on, but we also have to understand that, most of the player acquisitions have happened. The Jets just made another one. There'll be more tweaking to the roster. Hopefully, maybe we could get Cameron Jordan. There was a report that the Bears are not really interested in him, and that was a big potential destination for him because of Dennis Allen over there. So maybe he comes to his senses and goes, hey, Aaron Glenn, I knew you from back in the day. Let's get a little contract going. But So there'll be little, acquisitions here and there, but by and large, we know the roster and who's going to do what. And there's a secret weapon on the Jets roster. There's been that maybe nobody's talking about. And I'll explain. Please do, Frankie. That secret weapon, it comes in not in the form, because everybody's talking about, Sadiq and Cooper and Mason Taylor's going to have a big year too, and all of these things. And Garrett Wilson's coming back from injury and looks great. And Breece Hall just got a contract and he's going to really benefit. And we got Geno. What about him? But the guy nobody's talking about is Jeremy Ruckert. What? Needle scratch on a record. What? Jeremy Ruckert, Frankie, what are you talking about? Well, I'm going to talk about personnels, one of my favorite things to talk about. And I think the Jets now, with the roster the way it's constructed, and really Tim Patrick fits into this perfectly because he's a big dude that you can use in 11 personnel that can block his ass off. That's basically how Jacksonville used him in the blocking game. That's why he doesn't have much stats. But, if you talk to the Jacksonville beat writers, they'll tell you, oh, yeah, he played a pretty big role. It was pretty, not a major role, but, wide receiver blocking is not a huge part of your offense, but it is important. And so you can go to 11 personnel and have this big dude in there who can block. And that's important because if you go to 11, the defense is going to go small. And you got a big dude like this, just like Omar Cooper can block. And, you don't want Garrett blocking much, but, that's a good way to construct some mismatches in your matchups. And so all of this is to say, with all this flexibility, I think the Jets are going to do a lot with Jeremy Ruckert, actually. Jeremy Ruckert is the third tight end, but I think this actually means that Andrew Beck is going to be on the practice squad, and our primary fullback is going to be Jeremy Ruckert. Our third tight end is going to be Jeremy Ruckert, and at times, he's going to be on the field with his fellow tight ends. Now, what does all this mean? Okay, great, Frankie. What does this have to do with anything? How's it going to help us win? You're saying. Well, let's take a look at a chart. A chart, Frankie. A chart is not football. Well, this charts how football teams win. What is this? What's going on here, Frankie? You're going to have to explain it. Yeah. This says what personnel diversity means for EPA per play in games. EPA per play is how we is one of the ways that you measure offensive efficiency. The higher it is, the more efficient and better you are at playing offense. So what does this show? This shows down here on the x-axis, this is the number of personnels used. And the fewer you use, the worse off you are. And it's very clear that the more personnel groupings that you use, the better you are as an offense. Like this chart is wonderful because it's very clear that you really want to be able to have at least 6 personnel groupings that you do at least 5% of the time. And if you do that, you will have the best EPA per play on average. So in other words, the more personnels you have, the better your offense. Now, what does this really mean? Well, it means that you need to have the people in order to pull this off. So what are personnel groupings anyway? Well, 11 personnel means 1 tight end, 1 running back. Remember, there's only 5 eligible receivers, not counting the quarterback. El cinco, 5. That's it. So if you have 1 running back and 1 tight end, that means you must therefore have 3 wide receivers on the field. That's a very frequent personnel. What about 12 personnel? 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. It always has to equal 5, remember. And then you could go 13 personnel. This is where Ruckert comes in, right? 13 personnel, 3 tight ends in there. You could even go 14 personnel, but most teams don't. But then you have 21 personnel. What if Ruckert is a fullback and in the backfield on some plays? Now you have 20. So you got Breece back there, you got Jeremy back there, and Jeremy's going to be a lead blocker because he's bigger than Beck and just as athletic and can catch the ball a little better. Is a little more athletic than Andrew Beck. So why not use him in that role? Now you got 21 personnel. Okay, what about 22 personnel? 2 tight ends and two backs. So you got Jeremy in there and our two tight ends on the line, say, and one wide receiver out wide. And now that's how you get to 5 and 6 personnel groupings. And the reason it's exciting is because we got Kenyon Sadiq, who's a tight end that plays like a wide receiver. You got Mason Taylor, who can be in line or split out. Now we got a guy like Tim Patrick, can go inside, outside, can block his butt off in the C-gap. Usually, C-gap insert is one way. Like if you're going 11 personnel, the other team is going to go, all right, we need a nickel in here. So they bring in a little quarterback, and then you run out of 11. But in order to run out of 11, you need wide receivers who can block, and boom, that's why Tim Patrick's here. And Adonai Mitchell can do the same. And Omar Cooper can do the same as well. So lots of flexibility. And again, so what this means is if you have, it's basically schematic fluidity that we talk about on defense. Well, this is it for the offense right here. This is schematic fluidity. If you can use up to 6 personnel groupings on at least 5% of your plays, you're going to do better. You're going to get more EPA per play now. Why is that happening? Because you're confusing the defense. Remember, we live in a world of tape ubiquity. There's tape all over the place. Everybody's got your tape. The minute you do something, they're studying it, looking at it, figuring you out. So if you just do the same things over and over again, you're going to get figured out very quickly. This is something that happens with Cliff Kingsbury, for example, and his offenses typically, as one example. And so the reason that this graph is the way it is because it means teams are in different personnel groupings. It's harder to prepare for those type of teams. And then when they're on the field, it's harder to know exactly what they're doing, exactly what's going to happen. They can run out of 11 personnel. They can throw out of 13 personnel. They can throw out of 14 personnel. Think about our 13 personnel, where we got 3 athletic as hell tight ends, Mason Taylor, Kenyon Sadiq, Jeremy Ruckert, some of the most athletic tight ends in the league, probably as a group, if you think about it, who can all run routes to a certain, certain quality. We're going to throw out of that? Holy shit. we can we can really do some things with this roster. So that's the beauty of it. And I think that the secret weapon that nobody's talking about actually is Jeremy Ruckert. He's going to be blocking. He's going to be in the backfield. He's going to be in motion. He's going to be a very important part of this team. And don't forget Jeremy Ruckert. I mean, don't forget this man. Just because he's the third tight end, that does not mean that he doesn't have a role. In fact, he has a big role. We're going to need him even more these days in order to do the things that we want to do. Secret weapon, Jeremy